Hi, this is Rabbi Tzvi Mandel of Congregation Kahal B'nai Yisrael, Community of Jewish Friends, and I'd like to thank all the people that wrote me such beautiful comments, and I'd like to relate to you a story tonight with the great Rabbi Melech Lezhenska, the author of Noam Elimelech, one of the greatest students of the Maggid, and the story starts with, there was a Yid by the name of Rabasha, who was a Chassidic Yid and a very wonderful person, and he a big Torah scholar with very fine character, and also a very rich man. So they would say about him that he has both worlds, had a lot of money, and he had a lot of learning, and a lot of good Torah traits like a Jew should have. And over the years, he built himself a beautiful Beis Medrash, a shul, with any number of people that would be interested in studying all day, and he supported them and their families just for the sake of helping Torah scholars and allowing them to study the Holy Torah. And this Rabasha had 3 daughters and a number of sons. So his first 2 daughters, he married off to the best of the best, also Torah scholars and very fine boys from fine families and rich families, so that they were all very happy. The third daughter, as many matches as people offered for her, she wasn't interested. And of course, Rabasha would go regularly to the great Rebbe Melech, his Rebbe, and write out a kvittel, his name and his mother's name and his children's names and all of his family. And he mentioned to the Rebbe again, my third daughter, I need a shidduch for her, I need a match for her, and nothing seems to be happening. The Rebbe Melech closes his eyes and then he says, Rabasha, if you listen to me, go to the city of Primishlan and ask for a man by the name of Rabbi Yisrael. His son is your daughter's match. And it'll be so good. They'll have such a good life together. And not only that, but you yourself, Rabasha, you're going to have a very big favor from this Rabasha, Mitzvah Hashem, I hope. Rabasha's elated. He doesn't even go home. He goes straight to the city of Primishlan to meet this Rabbi Yisrael, hopefully his future mechutin, his daughter's future father-in-law, and he meets with this man, and this man doesn't make such a great impression. Person, pauper, lives in the poorest part of town, and he thinks to himself, look, the Rebbe said, so let me at least give it a chance, and he asks to meet with his son, and the son made an even less impressive, a less impression on him. And skinny guy, it looks like he hasn't eaten in days, and nice and fine character traits, but I don't see anything so great about him. Let me speak to him, let me discuss a Torah issue with him. Maybe he's a scholar, maybe the Rebbe wants, he seems to be a fine boy, and he doesn't come from such a great family, but maybe he's a Torah scholar, so I'll support him like I do so many others, and maybe my daughter will be happy. And he starts speaking with him about different Torah discussions, and the boy doesn't seem to know what he's talking about. Well, he leaves Primishlan, thinks to himself, okay, look, maybe I have to think about it, Goes home. And on the way home, as he's thinking about it, the good side comes in and says, Asha, the Rebbe told you that this is for your daughter. How could you even question it? And so he's all mixed up, comes home, walks into the house, and the wife and the children, hi, how was your trip to the Rebbe? And they see something's not regular, not it's not the Rabasha that they know, not the father, not the husband that they know. And he tells them the whole story. And they all jump on the bandwagon. Oh, no, it's not for us. Please. We have such a fine daughter with such character traits, and she's so good and so beautiful and fine. How are you going to marry her off to a schlepper that doesn't even have any money and comes from a pauper family? And not only that, he's not even a Torah scholar, so not even that's right. Time goes on, and Rabasha doesn't feel comfortable with what he's doing, and he doesn't feel comfortable with not doing it, and he's all mixed up. And one day, his daughter comes to him and says, look, you don't always tell me the different matches that have been read to me, that have been spoken about to me, but I heard about this boy, and I heard that our holy Rebbe, Rebbe Melchizedek, who knows everything in the world and everything in the higher worlds, spoke to you about a match for me. I'm very interested. And this gave him a special strength. And he said, you're right. And he turns around and announces in the house that he's going to Primishlan to do this shidduch with his daughter, and that she consents and she wants it, and this is the right way. I've brought you all up with him on the tzaddikim, with faith in the tzaddikim that have straight thinking and views in the higher worlds and know whose match is whose. I have no questions. I have no problems marrying my daughter to this boy. He has very fine character, and the Rebbe said he's our match. So what's the other question about it? He leaves the house. The family was so angry. And goes to Rebbe Shlan. And again, he meets Rabbi Yisrael, and he says, I'm interested in your daughter. And time goes on, and the wedding happens, and the family is very turned off, and they in fact ignore this boy, and the other sons-in-law and the sons sitting and studying all day. Seems they didn't have such nice character like he did, but they always scoffed at him and made fun of him in front of him and not in front of him. And he would always be sitting with the book open, with the sefer open, but he wasn't like the others, screaming and shouting and debating and speaking and all that. He would just sit over the book and turn the pages and barely move. And, they said, what does he know? He's probably just sitting there and falling asleep. And Rabasha would go over to his daughter every once in a while and say, my dear daughter, I love you so much, and I never wished anything bad for you, but maybe you should think of parting from him. And she said, nothing in the world would make me part from my husband. He's first of all, he's a wonderful young man and treats me so nicely, and his midas, his character traits are so special and so Yiddishlich. And yes, we love each other very much, and I don't even want to hear anything like that from you. Well, okay, so at least he knows his daughter loves this young man. His name was Simcha. And life goes on, and one day, this Simcha comes home very late at night, and his shirt and his pants are all dirty and wet and full of blood. And she says to him, Simcha, darling, what happened to you? I mean, she was used to him going out late because she knew that she wasn't supposed to know, but she knew anyway that he was going to Prava Chatzos. He went to the nearby wilderness and would say the special prayers that we say at 12 o'clock at night at Chatzos, which it says in Code of Jewish Law everyone should be doing, but really only great people do. I shouldn't say great people, but people that are sensitive to the destruction of the temple, who take it very seriously and have Yiras Shamayim, and they in fact cry for the destruction of the temple and for the return of the Shekhinah to the Beis Hamikdash, which is the cause of all evil in the world. And this time he came home extra late, and here, this is what he looks like. Please tell me what happened, Simcha. And he tells as follows. I had finished saying the Chatzos, the Tikkun Chatzos, and I was ready to come back home already. It was so late, and I was learning all day. I was tired. And all of a sudden, I hear a voice coming. Rescue us, rescue us. So how do you not help a person where you hear such a thing at that time of the night? It's pitch dark. I couldn't even see where I was going, but I just go towards the voice, and I see the most horrible thing in my life. I see a beautiful, beautiful wagon. Must have been some kind of a royal wagon from some great ministers or something. And the wheels were turned over, and it was like just sinking more and more into the river nearby. And numbers of people screaming and shouting, please save us. So I ran over, even though I didn't have any strength. I didn't have any physical strength after a full day that I put in. Started schlepping them out one by one, and somehow Hashem gave me the strength, and I schlepped them. And I saw they all looked like very high royal people. All of them were non-Jews, but human beings. You have to help a human being. And I was ready to go back home, and they all called to me in unison, no, please stay here, wonderful human being that you are. We want to help you, want to pay you back. And he says, no, I don't need anything. I did what Hashem wants. I appreciate that I helped some people's lives. I saved their lives. And one of them says to him, listen, we have here the second in command, the King of Poland. And he's in fact a nephew of the King of Poland also. He could do anything you want for you or for your family or for your people. Why don't you ask him for a favor? And again, he bows nicely and he says, it's okay, don't worry, Hashem takes care of me, Hashem takes care of my family, Hashem takes care of the Jewish people. I don't need your favors. I just did the thing that every Jew should do, that every human being should do, but especially the Jewish people were especially sensitive in these things and taught to help people. And he walks away, comes home. This is what he told his wife. This was the story. Anyway, back home, things are as usual. And Shabbos, he tells his wife he'd like to go to Rebbe Melech, the Rebbe, for a number of weeks, which was, those days was a regular thing. Chassidim would go on weeks on end. And his wife says, of course, I'm so happy you go to the Rebbe, the Heilige Rebbe, and he was our Shadchan. But whatever, we are Chassidim of the Rebbe Melech of Lezhenska. So have a safe trip, and don't forget to get a blessing for myself and for you and for our family and for all of us. And he goes to Rebbe Melech Lezhenska. That Friday night, by the Holy Rebbe Melech's Tish, the holy Tish that Rebbe's Chassidim have every Friday night, and a big scholarly debate broke out between a number of the young men that were sitting and studying all day, very respected young men, and they couldn't come to a decision on some deep thought that they had in studying, whether it was the revealed Torah or in Kabbalistic and Chassidic discourse that they had heard from the Rebbe, and they didn't know what to do. So they went to the Rebbe Melech Lezhenska, and they said to him, Rebbe, please listen to us. Rebbe Melech was very deep in concentration, and he hears both sides, and he says, why don't you ask Simcha? They go over to Simcha, and Simcha gives them an answer so deep in intellect and in thought, and also so wide, and showed the wide knowledge that he had in the whole Talmud and the Zohar and all the studies that they couldn't get over it. And all sides consented to his answer being the correct answer. Meanwhile, unbeknown to Simcha, his father-in-law happened to come for that Shabbos also. But he was sitting at the end of the table. I don't know if he always sat there or just that Shabbos he happened to be sitting there. And he couldn't believe what he saw. All the students of the Heilige Rebbe Melech, they were great, great scholars themselves, and they consented to what Simcha has to say, and he heard part of what he was saying, and he couldn't get over it. So he comes humbly over to Simcha, and Simcha was ready for him again, and he said, listen to me, my dear father-in-law, I'm not going to hear it again from you. You want me to divorce your daughter? No, if your daughter would consent to it, then I'll do it right away. But we love each other, and I'm sure she doesn't want to divorce me, and I don't want to divorce. And he says, what? God forbid. Simcha, I'm coming to you humbly to ask you for forgiveness for all the years that I and my family were so nasty to you, and we didn't consider you anything, and you were so humble and so hidden in your learning. Please, please forgive me. And Simcha says to him, of course I forgive you. I was hiding myself. It has nothing to do with you. It wasn't your fault. And the rest of Shabbos, him and his father-in-law sat next to each other, and they enjoyed the learning and the dancing and the singing. And they decided to go home together. So they go together, and before they come to their city, all of a sudden, Rabasha sees some of his other sons-in-law and his sons coming towards him. So he stops his wagon, and they look very scared and very broken. What happened? He asks them. So they say, it's not good, it's not good. What are you talking about? What happened? So they said, someone from our city took a dead non-Jewish girl, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, and threw the body into our property. And the police came, and already some of your sons-in-law and some of your sons are already sitting in jail, and they were waiting for you. They heard you were out of town, and we didn't do anything. We know that we didn't do anything. And of course, we all know that in Europe these things happen hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, even before Europe, where they would make up the Bilbul Dam, the blood libel, as it became known as, where they would take one of their own people, sadly enough, and kill them, and then blame the Jewish people. They would say that the Jews used the blood of the victims in the matzah for Passover. It was 100% not true. Anyway, immediately, Rabasha and Reb Simcha and the rest of the family turn around and they go straight back to Lezhensk, the Rebbe Melch Lezhenska. They come into the Rebbe, right out of Kvittel, and the Rebbe looks at them and says, why don't you ask Simcha? He's the one that could help you now. And Rabasha turns to his son-in-law Simcha, and Simcha says to the other sons-in-law and sons, what's the name of the main person behind this whole thing that's planning this thing against the Jewish people, against us? He said, so-and-so. And he's known to be a drunkard, you can't even talk to him, but who's the one that's over him from the government? Oh, him? That's the big anti-Semite, the nephew of the king, second guy in command. You'll never get through to him. I mean, Simcha, look, I don't know who you are because you've always been such a great scholar and righteous man. You've always been hidden from us. But with him, Simcha says to his father-in-law, you have nothing to worry about. Hashem helped us already, right? Hashem sends the refuah before the makkah. God sends the healing before he sends the plague. So We're okay. Let's go. And they all go together to the palace of this anti-Semite, and Simcha rings the bell and tells the butler there, my name is Simcha, and I'd like to speak to the Royal Highness. And he goes right to the guy. He was busy with his businesses, and he says, some Yid wants to see you, some Jew. He says, a Yid? Tell him I don't want to see him. He says, but he says that he knows you and that he did you a favor. And he says, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, let him come in. Comes in and he doesn't recognize Simcha. After all, it was a dark night that night when he saved his life and his whole family's life. And he says, listen to me, Jid. If you don't leave here immediately, I'll just throw you in the dungeon where all you people belong. But Simcha doesn't lose himself, and he's standing there straight, with his head up, and says, Your Royal Highness, do you remember that night what happened? When you and your family were drowning? And the royal carriage was mostly in the water, just sticking out very little, and you were shouting out for someone to rescue you? And this Jid here came to rescue you? He looks at him and says, excuse me, sir. Please forgive me. I didn't mean anything bad. And Simcha says, you know, we Jews are humble. We forgive you. I need a favor from you now. He says, anything you want. Anything you want. You didn't want a favor that night. What can I do for you? And he tells him the whole story about the blood libel against his father-in-law, and some of his family is already sitting in jail, and they want to put his father-in-law in jail now, and the whole city is scared out of their wits. And he says very nicely and very humbly to Simcha, you have nothing to worry about. Of course, he looked into the case, and he saved all of them. And the great schus of the Rebbe Melech Lezhenska, Hashem helped us with such a great tzaddik, rescued another whole family and probably a whole city. Schusa Yogan Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael, Amen. The great tzaddik, Reb Moshe Teitelbaum, once a non-Jew came to him and asked him for help. And he said, Rebbe, I need a kameya. I need a written mystical amulet, what do they call it, to hang on my necklace. And the Rebbe thought to himself, wrote something out, and gave it to him and told him, always wear it on your neck. You'll be protected from everything. And he thanked him very much. And it saved him in many different ways. And one day it fell down and it cracked open. Of course, it's not supposed to be open, not supposed to be looked at. And he asked his Jewish friends, what does it say there? And he said, it says what King Solomon says, V'hanachri asher yavod le'espal